Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to Moan Inc. If you guys are new here, then what is up? My name is Erica. Heya, how you doing? And if you're into the history of the ancient Greeks and the Romans, maybe you're just into the mythology and maybe you just really want to get through the Iliad and so you're watching all these videos to help you with the book, that is totally fine. If that sounds like you guys are going to want to hit that subscribe button. It's a little bit smaller because my books are getting very tall over here. If you haven't noticed, every time I do a book, a copy of the Iliad or some sort of inspiration gets added to this pile. I didn't think this through because I don't know how tall it's gonna get. Either way, totally off topic. Can you please subscribe to the channel? The button is below. It absolutely makes my day when that number goes up, at least by one. So yeah, that way you know every single time I post in the future. Let's just get on to the video because that intro was trash. Anyways, the topic of today's video is shown in the title, and today we're gonna be talking about book 12 of Homer's Iliad. The last episode that I posted, I don't know if it was last week or the other day. I can't really remember. I don't know what order these are going up in. I just tend to see whatever is edited first. I think it was just a couple of days ago that I posted book 11, and that book was super duper long. So I promise that this episode is going to be much shorter. I literally wrote a summary and then wrote a summary of my summary in order to make this the shortest episode that I can, to make up for last times. I was gonna say last week's. I don't know if it was last week's, but to make up for last time's episode. So we've tried to, I've tried to memorize it as best as possible. As you guys know, I don't sit and do this with notes. So it's really, if it comes out, it comes out. If not, well, then you're just gonna have to go and read the book at the same time as these episodes because I'm trying. So let's just roll into the action of book 12 and hopefully this episode is painless. So book 12 opens literally off the last line of book 11, where we still have Patroclus, who is helping Eurypylus because he was injured, right? So he's doing that, he's sort of finishing that up, gonna go see Achilles, and all the Greeks remain fighting because it's still the same day, okay? Still literally the same minute as the last book. So everybody's still fighting, and apparently it's just like not gonna go well. Like Homer tells us this whole day, as we found out from last book as well, it definitely isn't gonna go well, and that's probably because Homer suggests that way back when the Greeks were constructing their whole ditch and wall situation, they did not make an offering to Poseidon or to Zeus, which obviously they were pissed about. There's even a moment where they're like, that was rude. So they're basically holding a grudge, right? And we find that out now, that they are holding this grudge and they're gonna hold it for as long as they have to. Homer does tell us that as long as Achilles is in the tent, as long as Hector is still alive, and as long as the walls of Troy have not been destroyed, that means that everything is pretty much gonna stay the same because all those pieces need to move in order for the battle to continue, if that makes sense. So they're basically gonna keep fighting each other at this rate where it's like the Greeks are kind of losing, the Trojans then kind of start losing, the Greeks then kind of they're gonna keep doing this until one of those puzzle pieces starts moving. That's what Homer tells us. Homer cuts to the battlefield and he tells us that Hector is like a whirlwind down there. He is just doing his thing and the Trojans are pushing the Greeks right back into the Greek camps, right? So beforehand they were out there. So before we had the Trojans on one side of the ditch, we had the Greeks on the other side of the ditch. And then they're sort of fighting before, like before the ditch is where they're fighting. And then now they've all sort of moved. So now they're fighting right up against the ditch and the walls, right? So the Trojans have properly pushed the Greeks back. Hector is continuing to rally up the Trojans. He's doing a fantastic job. Props to Hector. He is really rallying everybody up. However, what he notices is that the horses are getting scared of this ditch because the ditch is big. I know that I'm saying like a ditch as if it's like a teeny tiny thing they just like dug with a shovel. This thing is massive. So the horses are getting scared of this though. So they don't want to like go through the ditch. They don't want to hop over the ditch. The horses are not having any of this basically. So this other guy called Poulydamas, 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 I don't actually know, but either way. So that guy, he goes over to talk to Hector and he's like, look, we're not gonna do this. We're not gonna be able to attack the Greeks with the horses. So what we have to do is we gotta dismount everybody from their horses, from their chariots, and then you have to lead us all on foot. And obviously, Hector loves hearing this. He's like, oh my God, I'm a genius. This is amazing. I can totally lead these men into battle. So Hector then has all of the Trojans dismount from their chariots. He instructs sort of one member from each area to be in charge of all of these chariots, and everybody else comes forward and he splits them up into 5 different groups because he decides that's the formation that they have to do. So they got 5 different groups of loads of men. The first group is led by Hector and Poulydamas, so they both lead, basically the best heroes are described in the first group. So they lead that group. Second group is then led by Paris. God knows why Paris is leading anything. Paris couldn't lead a parade, but whatever. Paris leads the second group. The third group is then led by Helenos, who I've mentioned before. We then have the fourth group, which is led by Aeneas, and then we have the final group, which is led by Sarpedon and Glaucus, right? So those are the 5 groups that we have. Now, all the men were ready to attack, okay? All of them are in their various groups. They're all ready, apart from this one idiot, right? His name is Achilles. He decides that they're not going to go on foot. He's like, this is a terrible idea. My horses are great and I don't want to leave them behind and blah, blah, blah. So he decides to advance with his men on the Greek camp with the horses, which you're like, they just explained why you shouldn't do it. I don't know why. Like, what? This man is a dummy, because he leads his men around the side of the Greek camps thinking like, aha, surprise attack. And as they go around the side, there are these 2 other Greek men. Their names are not really that important. These 2 other Greek men spot them. They tell everybody on the wall, and everybody starts throwing rocks at them from the top of the walls. And so they're all like dying because they're being crushed by rocks. And Asius like screams up at Zeus and he's like, you tricked me. I didn't think that the Greeks were gonna retaliate. Like, what the did you think? I'm confused. You're in battle. You're advancing on somebody's camps and you think, what, they're having dinner or some shit. This is the middle of a battle, man. Like, what? So the Greeks kill a lot of Trojans, and then all of them come out to start stripping the Trojans for their armor, because once again, that's what they do in this book. So as this is happening, we then cut back to Hector, and Hector is still standing with all his men. They have not figured out how the hell to attack the Greek camps, so they're all still like staying put and discussing it. And actually, it's in this moment that they get a little omen from Zeus. So they see this eagle. As I've mentioned, the eagles are an attribute to Zeus. They see an eagle flying over them, and the eagle is holding in its talons this snake, this serpent thing. So they've got this little snake, and it's flying, and the snake is all bloody, and it's gross, and it's crusty, and you're like, ew. But as it's flying, then the snake sort of but its head hops up and round and bites the eagle. How did I forget that I was talking about an eagle? What is wrong with me? Either way. So it bites the eagle, and the eagle is like, the f, and so lets it go, and it drops onto the ground. This bloody snake drops onto the ground, but it's still alive, right? Okay, that's the whole point. The Trojans are looking at this. The snake lands right in front of them. They're all like, oh, okay. Poulydamas, or however you say his name, he's basically shuddering as he sees this, right? He's like, ha, Hector. Yeah, okay, that is all the sign that we need to know that the gods not on our side today, because we haven't realized we're the eagle. The Greeks are the snakes. They're going to bite us today. I don't think that we should attack. That's probably not a good idea. Hector then turns to Poulydamas and he's like, well, that is absolutely not what I want to hear. And if you think I'm going to trust you reading a stupid eagle and a snake over a god because Zeus has already promised that he's on our side today, you are out of your mind and you're insane. I'm gonna trust the gods. We're gonna attack the Greeks. Okay, you do as I say. So Hector then leads his army towards the Greek camps. They arrive at the gates, and the Trojans start attacking, right? They have these little futile attacks and advances, because on the top of the gates, on the top of this structure that the Greeks have built, we have these famous Greek heroes, the ones who are not injured, obviously. They're up there and they are attacking the Trojans with like rocks and stuff. And even the non-famous Greek heroes, they're up there still throwing rocks. The Trojans hoping to crush them to a little teeny tiny pulp. Big and little Ajax are up there, and they're the ones who are really sort of like encouraging everybody to keep going, because they start getting scared. People are like, there's a lot of Trojans and we don't have that many rocks. And Big and little Ajax are doing a great job of rallying everybody up and being like, you got this, guys, woo! Now the main Trojan in this scene is Sarpedon, and Sarpedon is the one who is targeted by Zeus, because obviously he's Zeus' son. So Zeus puts this like insane battle hungry lust into Sarpedon, and he's like, you go, boo. And so Sarpedon is like all riled up. He starts riling up Glaucus to go, because they're a duo double act type team thing, right? That's them. So he starts, riling him up. And Sarpedon is described as advancing with his Lycians or Lycians, depending on if you pronounce that C as an English C or the K is like a hard Greek one. So Sarpedon is advancing, and he's described, this really bothers me. Sarpedon is advancing, he's described as having a shield and as having 2 spears. Now I read that again whilst doing this summary, and I thought, how? Because if you've got a shield, let's say the shield is on your forearm, right? Where else would it be? It's on your forearm. Are you holding 2 spears in one hand, or are you holding 1 in each hand? Because if you're holding 2 in one hand, I feel like that would be useless, because you couldn't really control that very well. You probably wouldn't throw them. You'd probably want to drop one and fire one. But if you have both, if you've got 1 in each hand and you've got a shield, are you actively using the shield and then trying to attack like this? Like, I don't know how that would work. Maybe you're just punching with this hand and you're holding 2 spears in this hand, but can 2 spears fit in one hand? I have lots of questions about how Sarpedon is doing this, quite frankly, none of which are probably going to be answered. But in case you happen to be an ancient historical weapon mastery person, then please leave it in the comments for me, or DM me. Please somebody explain how Sarpedon is holding 2 spears and also a shield. What? From the top of the Greek walls though, this guy called Menestheus sees Sarpedon and what's his face, Glaucus, approaching, and he's like, oh, that is not good. So he then turns to the guy who's next to him and he's like, I need help on this side because they're coming this way with all of the Lycians. So I need you to go over there, or Lycians once again. But he tells the guy, I need you to go over there and to tell Big and Little Ajax to come over and help. And at least if one of them, at least if we can just get Big Ajax on this side, we'll be okay. But I can't fight them off by myself. Like, they are far too powerful. Like, Sarpedon is a really, really good guy in battle. Bear in mind, this is the guy who was also stabbed in the thigh. Good as new, okay? So, like, he's scary. So the guy runs over, he talks to Ajax squared, and Big Ajax is like, we're gonna leave Little Ajax here, and I'm gonna come with Teucer or Teucros, depending once again. I'm gonna come with him and we'll go over and we'll help Menestheus. So they then, as a duo with the guy who was sent over there, they then go back to Menestheus to help him fight off the Lycians. Ajax kills a bunch of them. He actually kills one of Sarpedon's best friends, which Sarpedon was like, rude. But also Teucer ends up, because remember he has a bow and arrow, he ends up shooting at Glaucus, who is like super duper close to the wall. And so Glaucus basically turns around because he's been shot, right? So he turns around, he starts retreating, which Sarpedon notices. And Sarpedon is like, uncool, man. And as he's yelling at him, then Teucer tries to take aim at Sarpedon, but obviously Zeus is watching, and so Zeus like bats off his little arrow, and he's like, no, that's my son, what the hell? So Sarpedon is fine, right? But Sarpedon is by himself now because Glaucus left. So Sarpedon turns around to the Lycians and he's like, hello, who is coming to help me? I'm by myself. And in response, all the Lycians start advancing, right? So all of them, like a lot of them were pushing forward. Sarpedon and Glaucus were at the head. Now all of them are pushing forward. Now it's described that the Greeks were really strong at this moment too, because Big Ajax is on that side with Menestheus. So they are being very, very strong and they're pushing back on them. But Homer tells us that neither side was strong enough to overpower the other, that it's like this constant pushing from either side. Loads of the Trojans are dying, loads of the Greeks are dying, and in fact Hector is the first one to sort of push through that like wall of this like constant back and forth between the armies. So he breaks forward and he's got a rock, right? This part blows my mind. He's got his little rock, well, kind of a big rock, and he throws it at the Greek gates, right? So he throws them at the gates, and the gates are just locked with a stupid pin bolt, right? Like this super basic pin bolt. He lobs his rock at it, and then the thing like breaks to the point where the rest of the gates then shatter, right? Okay, we're talking like splinters everywhere, and the gates are just like bust open, and you're like, it was that easy, really? Like all they had to do was lob a rock at the stupid pinbolt, and that was it. And Hector turns around to the rest of the Trojans and he's like, well, hey, look at us go, we're amazing, blah blah. Like he's like rejoicing. He instructs them all to set fire to the boats. Now I just want to add a little note, I don't actually know if that's like, maybe it's Trojan slang for him being like, hey guys, we're in, let's go and like party and whatever, or if he literally means set fire to the boats. I don't know, because either would make sense for this moment. But he does say something along the lines of like, get your torches and put them on the boats, and you're like, oh no. And in the same moment, Hector just runs forward, right? He's all of a sudden got 2 spears in his hands. Where the hell did those come from? I also have a question of, was he holding them as he threw the rock at the gate, or did he put them on the floor? Did he have to go back and get them? Was he just like buying time and making a little show of it whilst he went back and got the spears? Why does everybody have 2 spears? Also, is Hector having a shield? I have lots of questions about the armor and about how he was holding it, but that's totally not the point, because Hector pushes through the gates, right? That's the point. He pushed through the gates, he leads the Trojans through, and Homer says that only a god could have stopped Hector. Like that is how powerful and how driven he is in this moment. Only a god could have stopped him. And the Greeks scatter in terror, and that is the end of book 12. So hopefully that was a little bit shorter. If not, I'm very sorry. But at the end of the day, book 12 is a very short book, and that's because we are still gearing up, remember, for book 16. We just have to plow through all the books in the middle so that you guys kind of know the narrative and why we're pushing towards book 16, which is a good one. So if you guys enjoyed that, even if you didn't, please, can you guys just like the video? I would really appreciate it. And I have zero shame asking you to do that. So like the video, subscribe, and we'll be seeing you next week with more videos here on Moaning. So we'll see you then. Bye guys.